Hello and welcome to yet another exciting, I said it, exciting edition of Emerge. My name is Ulo, your delightful host. And I am not alone in the building. I am with one of my esteemed mentors, Rev Walter. Now listen, before we cross over to him, here is what you need to know about the Rev with a sense of fashion. He is a transformational leader, NLP coach, digital marketer, and an author. I literally had to read that because you cannot pick one from these. How are you all these things?
Brilliant, Ulo. I am these things because I am, I'm one of those people, and I've had to learn this the hard way, that is so multi-talented. And one of the toughest things I had in my early life was to figure where I can throw in the weight.
Yeah.
And that throwing in of the weight really became powerful when I got to have an encounter with God. That's when he now was able to kind of zone in and let me kind of know where I'm supposed to be. But it was very challenging. And even now, I've been accused on social media of, you seem to know everything.
It's called wisdom.
I kind of feel bad, like, yeah, that's kind of tried, not quite a bit. But the truth of the matter is that it's just one of those things. But it's these areas. Areas I'm not competent are obvious, but in that area, anything around communication, that's my DNA. Anything around communication is my forte.
Now, talking about seeming to know everything, I literally come to your page just to get an insight on could be marriage. I've been following your marriage series and I'm hooked. The red flag
Yeah, the red
series.
flags. Now I'm doing the red flags.
I love them. Now, social media is literally this place where everything is there. Everything is there, literally. And we've got to be careful because, I could come to your page to get the inspiration, but there's so much else that's going on social media, especially sex sells. This is what is packaging the numbers and getting people, the audiences. And today, talking about sex sells, I am going to be chatting to Rev Walter about sex awareness. When is the right time to start talking to our children about sex, things to learn, unlearn, relearn, and just get our community in the right place. So when we talk about sex generally, what's your relationship like with sex?
Well, for me, first of all, sex is a gift. So let's get that right. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's a gift straight from God. But like all gifts, there are things that God gives as a gift and then the enemy perverts. So unfortunately, the enemy has perverted sex like everything else. But it is a gift from God. It is natural. It is good. There's nothing bad about it. It's only that it is good within its confined right place. So obviously what defines confined right place depends on your faith, your beliefs, and what you think is right and wrong. I have, of course, very absolute narrow faith, which is faith in my belief in Yahweh and God through Yehoshua, which is Jesus, that kind of thing. So it's a Christocentric view. But truth be told is, even if one expanded to a more moral and ethical humanitarian view, there's still tenets that are universally true, even about sex. So it must be responsibly, done. It must be within the confines of a loving relationship. So these things are true. And when that's broken, there are consequences.
Now, I know you are saying it like that, but I really wish the masses were actually adhering.
No, they don't.
To the standards.
That's a fact.
Why do you think that is?
Because if we use my Judeo-Christian view, it is because there is a war with the flesh, so to speak. So within the Christian context, the flesh is really just this carnal base self. And that self is about self. So it's a very selfish, soulish kind of base view. And then at the more transcendent level is the spiritual view, which is about others. So spirituality is selfless, whereas carnality or soulish thinking is selfish. So that is where the war comes, because perpetually speaking, when it comes to people, there's always a tug of war between doing what's right for the benefit of others versus doing what's right for self. And most people haven't got that level of transcendence. Most people are banal. Most people are carnal and at base level. And so they respond more to the base drives and instincts within self. And they haven't controlled those. And that's what you see. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's me just trying to say it in a more psychological, philosophical angle. I didn't want to do the whole, it's sin.
But it is sin,
Yeah,
Rev.
it is. I'm just trying to be, this is a platform going to secular people, so I'm just trying to sound more intelligent than the Pentecostal I am.
But how best do we diagnose before we prescribe?
No, we have to call it. But the problem is the modeling that is there in society today is very, very bad. And social media, video, and now the internet with all the porn doesn't help. So a lot of people are getting messed up in ways you can't even begin to imagine, Olo. And they're paying a price for it. For example, porn. It's so accessible today, I fear. Yeah. I'm not one of those parents that says, hey, no, these kids... I have mad control. We have mad control over our kids and what they watch and how much time they have on the phones, and we monitor everything. And again, at the same time, we talk. So we have a very open platform at our home. We talk about all subjects. Even my little kids are aware about sex because now we're in the LGBTQ era and you can't avoid it anymore. And it's just that in Zambia, we're still very conservative. So CSE is still dodgy. But in the developed world, it's absolutely off the hills. It's terrible. And you're at a place where now children can opt to have transitioning surgery or gender-affirming surgery without the consent of their parents.
Because it looks attractive and popular.
Absolutely. So now imagine, and you as a parent have no say over that. So the earlier you can begin to inculcate, because that's the word, we are their model. Forget about this thing about kids have their own. I've heard some famous actors saying, no, my kids make their own decisions. That's rubbish.
How dare you? And then what's your responsibility as a parent?
The Bible says foolishness is locked in the heart of a child, and you shall beat them with a rod and deliver them from that foolishness. So,
ouch.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're the parent. You're the one in charge. You're the adult in that equation. So you're the one to guide. So for me, I'm 100% for the idea of for lack of a better word, indoctrinating. The key is just to put in the right values, because whatever you put in at that formative stage between the age of 3 and 7, that stays for life. So you've got to be very firm as a parent to put these in there. And at the same time also allow for open dialogue, because we live in an era where this information is online.
Absolutely. The biggest
readily
enemy.
Online. It's
Literally.
not something, yes, just a few clicks and it's done.
Now,
so with that, it means we now have to come out of our shells, whether you want to talk about sex or not, it's no longer an option.
Now, I really like earlier, and I know that, look, there's something very, very interesting that you picked on, and this is why I just decided to slide this question in. I love that you spoke about you having these conversations with your kids. And I know that it's not as easy as it sounds for the rest out there. What do these conversations look like on a very realistic basis for you? How does that go? And how old are your kids? How many are
no,
they?
They're young. The little ones, I'll talk about the little ones. The older one is 12 now, he's in grade 7. And the younger one is in grade 2, she's 7. So it's a very awkward conversation, but we have it. Every time we do drives to school, I like to pick subjects and just go. So the other time I did like 2 months of LGBTQ talk.
Tell me about it.
No, for real. So have you heard of do you know what a lesbian is?
Oh my God.
And my son is like, what are they? Then he'd explain. I said, oh, okay.
And he knew what it was.
That's what I'm telling you. So this information is out there. So from there now, my job as a parent is to say, oh, great. So from your own understanding, what do you think of it? Then he says, well, it's a sin. Okay, why is it a sin? Then he tells me. Then I say, oh yeah, that's true. So then now I build from there. So I did that. My little daughter, of course, is too young to really, it's not computing. But either way, they are raised in a school where there's a lot of Christian values that are pushed out there. So they're catching that as well, because they are learning. There is CSE. And CSE now, since it's part of our education, they are being taught many things around sex. So that then complements, but we come and fill in the gaps. I do that a lot. And especially that particular time, we did a very, very lengthy, like I say, 2 months. That was the conversation. around gay, lesbian, transsexual, and what transitioning is. I really talked about it, but obviously being a Christian father, obviously I was also bringing in the angle of why it's wrong, that it's forbidden by God, but then I went on to explain why it's forbidden. And then even beyond that, where is sex supposed to be? In marriage. So of course my older son, that computed because, they've already learned about HIV and all these things, so they're familiar. With my little daughter, obviously all that was going above her head. I mean, I could see that, okay, she's not even getting it.
But
So
it's okay to
that's
get
fine.
started.
But it's a good start.
I'm curious to know then, when is the right time to start having sex conversations with our kids?
With the internet and with what's going on, as soon as I think for me, as soon as you see it anywhere,
Wow.
just start. Because kids grow at different paces.
Yeah.
But you can tell kids are very funny. My son took very long to become conscious of his nakedness.
He would walk around in his little panties.
Just across the house, butt naked. I mean, he did that like up to the age of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you see
He's
but
he's
my
a free
daughter?
soul. Yeah.
No, my daughter's 6. If the brother walks in the room, it's a funeral.
Yeah.
He's coming out! Covering herself like, wow.
I think I was the opposite.
You know what I mean? So
Literally.
for her, she's very conscious. So even in terms of because the mom traveled, so I did a lot of bathing her along with taking care of all these guys. So she'd only let me do that. But even then, when they were very, very young, as early as when she was 3 and 4, I told her, and again you asked the question, so we're going to talk about it. So I would tell her, nobody touches your nunu. Wash your nunu yourself.
Yeah.
So she learned that. And we're very particular, and you're very observant. You watch these kids, because they play around in the neighborhoods. So just be very alert and watchful. And purely that's just for their safety and, of course, for awareness as well. So if you drum it into these kids often, hopefully, it's not always easy, because what you got to understand about pedophiles and people that defile children is they're very good at grooming. This is what people don't understand. They are very brilliant at grooming. So they groom the kids. It's called priming. Yeah. That's an NLP. So you prime them, you prepare them.
Oh,
so
you that in NLP?
Yes, we call it priming. So you prepare these. That's how sexual abuse is done, even for older people. You build the trust. You build the closeness. You build the confidence. You behave in a particular way over a period of time. And everybody's different, 3 months, 6 months of just being with them and just giving them that confidence until they're so comfortable with you. And then at that stage, you strike. And it's very difficult because now they get into a very crazy place of mixed emotions. On the one hand, you are such a wonderful father figure they trust. On the other hand, you've just done the most horrendous, vile thing. And they now go into what we call a cognitive dissonance. They fail to compute that. And it's so difficult. And because of the trust that you've earned, you literally crush their souls. And at the same time, they can't run anywhere else because they are now totally dependent on you. That's what groomers do, especially to little kids.
And I know that we could look at this and say, look, it's easier. It's easy, especially that you highlighted earlier that if we have these conversations with our kids, they'll be aware and privation could be avoided. But the reality is that either way, these things are happening.
Absolutely.
So how do we pick red flags? You could add the scary part.
One of the red flags is sudden change of behavior, sudden change of demeanor. You know your kid. The same way you can recognize that they're sick because they change in behavior is the same way they would change. That's why being close to your children, I mean, I know we're all pursuing careers and everybody's busy with their careers, but to be honest, career pursuit at the expense of closeness to your children is very dangerous. And the only time you can observe and know something has changed about your child is if you're around them all the time, or at least you recognize their behavior and character traits. So one of them is a sudden change in their character trait and behavior. They become withdrawn, they are quiet, and sometimes if you watch how they walk, you might spot it. And of course, if you're involved in their bathing and dressing up, you will see it. So if you're not part of all that setup, how will you know? You won't.
It's quite sad.
That's why it's so important, mothers, fathers, whoever's involved in this whole, dealing with the children, you got to really have your eyes on the ball just to see it, because it happens and the character changes. And if you cannot spot the character change of your child, then you're too distant.
So now, for those that are already in this tragedy, and I know that NLP does facilitate some help to some extent, how can they reach you, and what are the terms and conditions?
Okay, so I don't do trauma because that's a very specialized field. We deal more with peak performance. So my space is in totally the opposite direction. We deal with peak performance, helping people to come out of their shell, become the best they can be, and perform at optimum level. That's the work we do. So we help people in that space. But in this space where there's trauma, where there's terrible events that occurred, and so they're going through some form of PTSD, so that one requires a proper clinician who is actually versed in psychology and who can help them in the psychiatry of their thinking, so that they actually come to terms with all the issues that become damaged as a result of the exposure to trauma. But for kids, it's absolutely terrible. And I know this is going to the extreme, but a lot of people don't know this. But if you go into magic and sorcery, which is like really on the deep end of things, magicians and sorcerers who are involved in what we call satanic ritual abuse use sexual trauma as a doorway for demonic possession.
Are you serious?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not making this stuff up. You can go read it off Secret Ages of the Teachings of the Ages by Manly P. Hall, or Aleister Crowley's book, I don't know what the title was, Sex Magic. And in both books, and a number of very well-known artists and individuals have spoken about this, that in order to channel an alter ego, to channel a powerful being that can, they can enhance the giftings in children that are prodigies, you use that method. So they use trauma. Trauma is pain. Yeah. So if you expose these children to very, very bad pain, what happens is there reaches a point where the brain snaps and fractures like a hard drive. Oh yes,
painful.
It's terrible. So when the brain has fractured like a hard drive, then you now have two distinct places. So the child in the mind hides in one of those. So they go into a place, it's a safe space in their mind. They hide there. And so the sorcerer, the magic, the enchanter can then now use that space, that open space, to now channel a being. So it's sex magic that does that. So satanic ritual abuse, which includes pedophilia, is done. So multiple raping of children. I mean, this movie Sound of Freedom is a big deal, and it's really going to show what it goes into detail, not really talking about why they have the sex trafficking. They just talk about the fact that it's the biggest deal going on now.
And they sensitize us.
Yes. So this is why it's such a big deal. Some of this so-called sexual abuse with children is not accidental. It's not random men. It's a lot deeper. It's more satanic than you can imagine. Here in Africa, it's ritual. Yes, it's ritual, because a lot of people who do this do it because it's ritual, and then there are others who it's traditional. And then a small number that are just sick people.
Right.
Yes.
So now
they're just sick in the head.
Absolutely. I'm very curious, because the bleep of time is is bleeping. Correct. I'm gonna slide in two closing questions. One is gonna be a game, but this one, like, maybe really under a minute. I'd like to know for you, because I mean, we've all got our pasts, and before you became a parent, you obviously had your own life going on.
Correct, of course.
What was your first sex experience like, and what relationship have you personally had with sex on a general basis? Did it make it easier for you
it's
to have...
ironic, actually, and I'm very open to talk about this, because it's something... I was sexually abused as a child. So a lot of people don't know. Oh, yes. That's why I have this passion on speaking on sex. Yes, absolutely. Sexually abused. So pedophilia, I experienced that as a 9-year-old at the hand of an older cousin. But you see, those are the things. And so I don't know what that had as an effect on me as an older child. It's difficult to say, but I do know that when I had my encounter with God, obviously God dealt with that. And so as a result, I was very active sexually. I was very promiscuous. In fact, for me, my vice before getting to know the Lord, mine wasn't drinking, it wasn't smoking, mine was womanizing.
Wow.
So I was a serial womanizer.
I had a similar experience, except that I wasn't abused, but I was nearly groomed.
Wow.
And I just had a very different perception of men. I viewed them as
Yeah.
objects, and it is real. And people
Yeah.
must know out there
Yeah,
that these
yeah.
things are
and they
real.
threaten. So once you get in that space, you are afraid. For me, it was just an intervention. I had a cousin, an older cousin, who was around, and when I went through that experience, he said, "Why are you allowing him to do that? I'm going to tell." And he's the one who went and reported to my auntie and uncle, and the whole thing blew sky high, and it became an endeavor which then died. Because these things are so embarrassing for families that most of them just bury it. That's the reason why they don't even make it to the police or stay at the police. Because it's a case between, do we want the family name to be dragged through the mud, or do we just hope that it's just cover it and hope it goes away? And so now you imagine, you cover and hope it goes away, but there's trauma in that child, and it's going to manifest in adulthood. That's how crazy this is.
Now listen, to end it on a good note.
Yeah.
And I believe that we must have these conversations from time to
Yes.
I'm going to do a series on just sex and, awareness, and we could just dig into a couple more conversations. Please pick a question in that box and tell us what it is.
I always try being, there are only three.
Because you're just going to read one.
No, 20. Okay. What are your flaws? I think my flaws, if I go with my wife and her complaints, I use...
Why did you say it like
because
that,
guys
Rev?
are the best ones at saying your spouse
We're
is more
the
than...
police.
So if I go with my wife and my wife and her complaints and buy her, even my family, it's being too untactful when it comes to talking to people about issues that I don't like. I don't have tact, but I've been working on it.
You're blunt.
Too blunt for my own good. Like really, really I am.
And for a reverend.
It's not good at all. I mean, I'll give you a very good example. There's a particular, I used to work in an area, and there was a restaurant nearby, and at one point I had heard that restaurant, they don't wash their dishes properly. And so the dishes are oily and stuff. So one day, now this is how much tact I did not have. So one day, the owner of the restaurant comes to buy something in the shop, and then as she's walking out, then I don't know if it's my mom or somebody just told me, "Oh, by the way, this is the lady that restaurant." I said, "Which restaurant?" "The one at the corner." And I said, "Oh, the one where they don't wash the dishes."
Now look, this is what the Rev has done to me. On that note,
Sorry.
You have been banned from Emerge. Thank you so much
Indeed.
for making time. I'm really, really grateful that you made time. I had a lovely time. And for you, please do let us know in the comment section down below. This is literally how we are going to end the show. But I cry when I laugh hard. Do let us know which part of the conversation was interesting for you. And do share your stories. And please reach out to the next person for that much needed help. And remember what I always say. If there's anything that you want to do, if it stands right and serves purpose, then go do it. Until next week, it's God bless and love ya.